Cool.
And we're live. Welcome everyone to another workshop for the Infinite Space Bazaar. I'm Josh from Celestia Labs, and I'll be hosting Ramin today. Ramin is an engineer on the Celestia Node team, but I'll let him do a more proper introduction on his own.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Hey,
Ramin.
hey everyone. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Joining everyone here today. I work on Celestia Node. There was a request for a sort of demo webinar display of how to get up and running and building something against Celestia Node, and I drew the short straw. Here I am presenting to everyone today. I'm prepared. We were just talking before. It's like, are you ready? Never ready. Always ready. Same thing. But yeah, I mean, it's the node, Celestia's data availability node is your interface to sort of building whatever on Celestia. So it's sort of the most, for better or worse, it is the interface that you use, right? So it's the most important part of the developer experience when building something. So being shown the ropes and how to get up and running is pretty important. So hence Josh summoning me here today for us to give a little demo here. So I think the goal is just to sort of like step through it, very informal. We'll go through Josh's docs on how to get up and running on one of our test nets. I'll share my enormous screen and try and blow things up so it's easy to follow along. And we'll just try and get set up, show you the ropes of how to sort of initiate the node, run a light node, get it starting to sync with the network, make some RPC requests. If we get that far, maybe we'll get ourselves some testnet tier, submit a blob, and then maybe we'll write a little bit of code, maybe a very teeny bit of code, and then
Awesome.
see if we get that far, and we'll go for it. Yeah.
So this isn't a validator or like a consensus node, but a data availability node, and that is what does data availability sampling, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So so I don't know how deep you've gone in these previous sessions with everyone of the different node types or the Celestia network architecture, but if you have consensus nodes, they operate block building, finality, consensus, transaction settlement. That's where our data is actually written to as a transaction, but we have this separate network. So we have two networks in Celestia. We have the consensus network, the data availability network, and we have this concept of a bridge between the two. But then additionally, if you've read the white paper and everything, a huge part of the security of the network is comes from the enablement of many people to run what we call these light nodes. So data availability sampling, to make it very short, means that lots of these light nodes are easy to run. They're quite light, hence the light in the name. But the idea being that they are continuously sampling data and verifying if there is some sort of data withholding or data integrity attack. I'm hopefully not in trouble if that's not an official term, but verifying that across the network. So, but the side effect of that is that having one of these light nodes is essentially your sort of account, if you like. And then as a developer, if you're trying to build something, you need something to operate against as you interact with the network. And so, the best way to do that is you run a light node yourself. It has its own API that you can speak to over RPC. And then as we'll show as we go through the docs, you'll have an account with some keys on your machine that you provision. That's where your balance for submitting blobs or submitting transactions to the network are broadcast from. And that's what I'm going back to the beginning. What I was saying, that is your interface. So essentially, in spinning something up to build something, you're also sneakily sort of enhancing the security of the network. So you get a twofer. It's pretty nice.
Awesome. I'm excited to learn some and post some blobs here, but I'm also excited for the code demonstration too.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. Anything else you think we should cover? Like, anything else about the node before we sort of dive into running through the tutorial that is important to point out for folks? Or what else do we want to achieve here in terms of an intro to Celestia Node? Like what else is important to know, do you think?
Think about like high level what you didn't cover, and I can't really think of much.
Okay.
I guess you mentioned a bridge like a bridge between the two, like the data availability
Mhm.
and consensus network? How does that work?
Yeah, essentially, it is the Celestia node running in a different mode, if you like, and basically it's almost, I don't want to use this word because it implies other things, but essentially it is a sort of relay between the two networks in terms of, a block gets settled, there's some data, it gets, that gets broadcast back through the bridge node, where the bridge node is making standard gRPC requests to the consensus network versus them gossiping over peer-to-peer. And then once that data is retrieved from the consensus network, it is then gossiped out to the DA network. So it's sort of a peculiarity of the architecture that we will eventually get rid of. It was more just an easy way to bridge them, but it's a side effect. Well, there's two things really. It's a side effect of there being two peer-to-peer networks. So on the DA side, it's libp2p. On the consensus side, it's like sort of vanilla Comet BFT. But yeah, it's sort of a Conway's Law kind of thing too, where you can sort of sense that there were sort of like two software projects that needed to get stitched together, and the architecture reflects that. If anyone's familiar with Conway's Law, which is basically your software architecture will be a mirror of your team communication architecture. This is kind of the best example I've ever seen
Interesting.
of that being actually the case. It's like, oh yeah, there's two different teams there. And like, yeah, that's how it was conceived. So there you go. But
Interesting.
yeah, that's something that is like buried in the literature that isn't necessarily obvious to everyone. Is that we have these two networks and
Mhm.
they have this sort of interplay between them. It's important to understand, especially as a developer, what's going on there. Yeah, and yeah, we'll
Definitely.
see when we start the light node. There's a flag that everyone on their first spin up forgets to add, and then you submit some state, and it says cannot do it. And you're
Yeah.
like, why? And you're like, you need to
Well,
speak to consensus node. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we'll go.
And I guess on that note, Gaurang Patel asked maybe general architecture, networking overview. You mentioned libp2p, so what is libp2p and how does it fit in? And then why are there separate networks? Kind of already answered this,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, libp2p from Protocol Labs, it's like a general sort of networking toolkit. If I believe Ethereum uses it. Like almost every sort of peer-to-peer application is using that as a set of libraries.
Mhm.
It's very well tested, very rich, um, very robust in terms of all the different types of like peer-to-peer networking topologies or stacks, if you like. I'm kind of waffling a bit, but that it implements. So it essentially uses the dynamic hash tables like the DHT from like BitTorrent, but uses that as a general purpose library for you to use. So essentially, if you're building a peer-to-peer network, very unlikely that you need to do something completely undifferentiated, like using HTTP or something at this point, where you're like you don't need to implement it from scratch. And there are these libraries that are very good for doing it. And in terms of sort of data interchange and everything, things like BitSwap, which we use for like gossiping data around the network, or it is like very well tested, robust, in production on many other projects. So it can take years to implement it from scratch yourself. So that's one side of it, is in terms of like, yeah, we're building this data availability network. But then, yeah, in a similar vein, leveraging the Cosmos SDK for all of the consensus network, they just happen to have their own. They didn't use libp2p, or they have Comet BFT, which is their own thing. And in a similar vein, trying to modify that to speak to the DA network might have been a many years undertaking, which would be a very fun research project, but our
not
sort of
very
internal matcher up to mainnet was like, we have to ship. So
good.
you have to ship. So right. So like, yeah, having the bridge as a stopgap just to get to mainnet, prove the network, get things going. But yeah, there is ultimately a goal to reconcile and merge those two networks at some point.
Nice.
How we do that, whether it all goes to Comet, whether Comet gets ripped out, but it's a serious undertaking and it's working right now. But it's definitely
Sounds like a
I guess my point is a huge project and a huge undertaking, lots of unknowns. But I guess, the two networks isn't big for any reason other than it was the quickest way to ship, and it works. There isn't like, oh, there is some security reason or like some reason related to the design of the network that requires the two. It just happens. It's like an implementation detail, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, it really confused me at first when I was getting into this world. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to know that it was actually it's not really that necessary as much as it was just the cleanest path forward.
Yeah.
You mentioned
Totally.
BitSwap. Is that used on Celestia Node as well?
Yeah. And the BitSwap's not something I can speak with too much expertise about. It's a very fast way, because if you imagine like we're a data availability network, so the core sort of primitive that we're passing around is blobs, right, and like the segments of the erasure encoded data. So that needs to get gossiped around, and BitSwap is, as far as I understand, without being too expertise in that protocol, is the fastest way to collectively gossip it around the network such that it's queryable and retrievable. Because when we do like, oh gosh, we're getting deep into it now, but when we're doing like reconstruction of the data square, which please don't ask me to go deep on the data squares, but there are parts that you have to get from around the network and you're reconstructing it or like trying to reform it. And so you have to like ask around the network, hey, have you got this piece? Have you got that piece? And yeah, BitSwap is at least the way that data is passed around as a new blob comes in or a new block comes in and it gets gossiped around the DA network. But I don't believe it's used for querying too. But yeah, it's a standard way of reliably gossiping this data in a distributed fashion, if you like, that is well researched and implemented. And yeah, you want to use them, but you don't want to build it yourself because you'll screw it up. So.
And I guess to kind of reel back in the separate networks, I feel like it's also important to understand that although there are two networks, they're actually really one network, meaning all the things that you post to the data availability network end up in a block, which is passed around by the consensus nodes.
Right.
So it's not like there's two different blockchains running or anything. It's just a matter of like how the whole entire system works. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything more.
Yeah. I would sort of classify it like when you do like sharding or any sort of key space design. Yeah, there is one logical network, which is Celestia, the network. But there are two physical networks implemented that make up that logical network, which are the consensus network and the DA network. Maybe that's one way to look at it. Yeah, that's a good point of clarification for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it can get kind of confusing. And
Yeah,
on that
totally.
note, maybe it's a good time to jump into running a node and
Sure, why not?
posting some blobs,
Alrighty.
maybe sampling something random.
We can try. All right. Do you want to? Is my screen up? Or?
Oh, you got to share, and then I'll add it.
Oh, am I not sharing? Okay.
It's all good.
I didn't realize. I'm going to do one window at a time just to make it sane, and then I'll switch around possibly. So just for everyone who's following along, we're going to go through this run a node Mocha testnet tutorial here. So if you wanted to follow along, this isn't actually the right one. It's
Good. It's in developers. Or if you click the...
Oh, yeah, totally. Here we go. This is what I was looking at. Yeah, submitting data. So is it this? Which one? Oh.
it's the CLI tutorial.
Okay, we're going to need this later, but yeah, this is what we're looking at. Sorry, I was getting a different consensus node earlier. Yeah, so this is what we're going to go through here. Maybe I can should I post it in the chat?
Yeah,
let's follow along.
Yeah, perfect. No, that works.
Oh, that's okay. But yeah, and then yeah, we're going to run through this. I am not going to share this because my screen's big. I'll just switch to my terminal, but we will run through this. So I think if I stop sharing,
yep,
switch to my terminal here, that'll be saner. So start with, I've checked out Celestia node from our main Celestia node repo. I've checked out to the tag, the release version v13.3, which is the current version. And yeah, you can see the sort of file structure. Oh, go on, sorry.
Or increase your font, I guess, on the terminal.
Oh, yeah, okay. How's that? That better? Or is it better if I make this smaller? How's that look?
Change it first. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
The bigger, the better, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's it looking for everyone? Yeah, pretty good. Okay.
I think it's, yeah.
Yes. So one thing I always do when I pull it down is run the test just to make sure I've got a good thing, but you don't really need to do that. Yeah, so if you're getting started, oh, go on.
We're saying it sounds like good practice. That's not something that I've done. So.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I just noticed, whenever I check something out certainly from like the main, it can be broken or something. But yeah, I always like to run the test especially because I work on it. So I often feel like I work on something and then it's all broken, and I'm like, oh, it can't possibly be my fault. So if you run the test before you screw everything up, then
you know.
You really did screw everything up. It was your fault. Whereas, yeah, if you haven't run the test, you're like, must be someone else's fault. But anyway, let me open a new tab. So the main thing you want to do when you're here is just run make build, building Celestia, and that will build out a version of the binary for the node. Might take a second because I'm on a slow computer and I'm running the test, but once that's done, we'll be able to do some stuff.
Can you, sorry to do it again. Can you zoom in like?
Oh, it doesn't retain anything. Okay, yeah.
So it's big.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like adjusting back to the lower font, smaller font.
Yeah, you know what it was? I opened a new tab, that's why. And it sort of reverted, I think. I did have it built before. I thought it'd be nice and quick just to run the build.
That's good. Doesn't take very long. So this is building the binary, and then
yeah, once it's built, we'll have a built binary of node in the build directory, which I'll show you here. So you'll see we have Celestia there. So I can do build. It'll give me some output, which is there's the node. So automatically you're dealing with it as a CLI tool. I know in the instructions it says make install. I kind of never do that, and maybe that's just a side effect because I'm always on different versions and working on it. So I never really install it. But yeah, I don't know if you have a comment there. Do you always install it, or do you always just take the build?
Yeah, I usually just install it so then I can use Celestia as the command instead of like living in that directory and using the build /Celestia.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, it just makes honestly the commands a little cleaner. That's like the best real reason I can give, and easier to access.
Totally. So that shows you can verify, like there's the version commit. We could go to GitHub. If I was showing my whole screen, we could go to GitHub and see what the last commit was, reconcile that against the last tag and the commits there. You can see we built it just now. You can see I'm on a juicy M version Mac. So yeah. So at this point, the main thing to do is you need to set up your accounts, your keys and account for the node. I'm going to give you a shortcut here. So the default location for this is in your home folder against these Celestia folders. And the main thing is to communicate is that we have two test nets, Arabica, Mocha, and then there's mainnet. So if you are on either of these networks as you're doing this kind of stuff, it will be appended to the name of the folder here. But I don't know when the last time I used Arabica was, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Let's see. Oh, I've got an Arabica 11 too. So I've got nothing there. So I have a Mocha set up before that's already synced to head and everything and has some tier. So I'm going to leave that as is and just like step through getting set up here with Arabica. And then as we get to sort of trying to show some commands, I'll move to Mocha. So yeah, so maybe I'll try and do the make install just to make it clearer because it matches. because I normally do the build Celestia and keep it that way. So because I'll throw it away after an hour or so of work one evening. But
Yeah. And then this will put it into your Go bin.
yeah. Okay, so now I can say which Celestia, got it there. I can do Celestia version. So now obviously I'm not doing the build, so I'm trying to make sure it's the one on the path. And let's see, it's 13.3, same one built today, same as this. Okay, cool. So installed, I'm not confused about which binary I'm using now, so that's good. So as do you always say Celestita? I always type Celestita instead, and I think of like Mamacita or something like that.
Happens frequently.
So let's see here. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna initiate a light client or a light node. So this is essentially the command for it. Celestia light init. So init, yeah, I think everyone here is a builder, computer program, but init, short for initialize, it's basically set it up. The main thing that you need to ensure you're adding here. So if I do this without anything, it will do a mainnet initialization. And if you've already done this before, meaning you have one of those folders in your home directory in the default location, it'll basically just say, oh, bro, I've already got one, nothing more to do, it's initialized, blah, blah, blah. So you'll see that's very different to what we're about to do, which is now I'm going to do light init on network Arabica. You saw I deleted those folders. Yep. So now we get slightly different here. So here you go. No keys found, new key generated, key name, here's an address, and here's something you should never share on the internet. But for now, we're on if someone on the stream wants to grab this and run ahead and maybe give it some testnet tier and do it all, go for it. But yeah, so now you can see we've got this. It's your sort of responsibility to save these, your recovery words. But yeah, now the node is initialized, and the next command for it is just to start, right? And that will start the light node. So this is going to now. It's because I've already got one running. Let me just stop this guy back here.
I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So so there you go. So now it's run up. You see. So when we were talking about libp2p earlier, this is this multi-address format that you see, which is something they have, which is you can see it's IPv4, which is the transport, the IP, TCP is the protocol there, the port, and this is, so in the DHT network, this is the node ID of myself. Like, you don't need to know about this, but that just shows you what's going on. So what we're doing now is we're essentially doing a
address too.
Oh, say that again.
That's different than the address of the actual public key of the node, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So this is the address of the node as a peer-to-peer node in the network, not you as a user, I guess, on the network, which is an identity attached to your key from the mnemonic. Yeah. So I don't know. How would you describe what's happening now, Josh?
So right now, yeah. What I'm seeing is that it's sampling old headers, and it's basically catching up to the tip of the chain, and it's going pretty quickly though. So I don't know how many blocks Arabica has on it, but
probably is about 1.6. Yeah. Earlier I did it. It took me a while.
Left it running, it would sync.
Maybe. So yeah, there's two things going on. It's doing an initial block download, which I don't know if we call it IPD in Celestia, but we call it that in Bitcoin, which is, okay, you need to sync to network head, download all the data. But what's interesting there is it is also, as data is coming in, it is sampling headers. So that's what we sort of alluded to earlier, is that when you start one of these light nodes, yes, it's pulling down all the data it needs to have the history of the chain. But it's also, as those are coming in, sampling, which is that sort of security aspect we were talking about earlier. So in these logs spinning by here, you will see sort of both things happening. Let me split this up. So let me try and make that smaller. See there. So we've got all these additional commands here. We've got that one. What's another good one to show? I like
You could show the sampling stats. I think that might be interesting.
That's what I was going to do. I need to do node store, right?
Yeah. Soon you won't have to, which is actually a very good UX improvement.
Yeah, this sucks. But yeah, essentially, every time you make one of these commands, you do have to reference the folder where the keys and the settings are. So before we jump to that, let's just have a look at these available commands. So each one of these in Node world is called a module of kind, and each one like bundles or bounds some type of functionality. So the blob, which is what this is all building up to, is submitting blobs and sort of the MO of the Celestia network. It's data that you share. Bridge node, which we alluded to, generates some auto completion for your CLI. DAS, data availability sampling, which we'll mess around with. So full and light, along with bridge, are the three sort of node types. So we saw earlier we were in light. So what happens actually if you do that? You do, give you some additional commands there. Celestia light, config remove, init start. So we used init start. We actually do need to do auth admin. So this is a neat one there, which you'll need later on as a developer, which is this generates you a JWT token for making commands, making requests to the RPC of the node. You also have the ability, so if you leave off that last command, it's a little noisy, but you'll see that there's different permission levels here. Read, write, admin. I as default always do admin because I'm naughty. It allows you to do absolutely everything over RPC, but yeah.
I guess that to clarify, that's also different than the private key for a public address.
Right. So yeah, so this is for you as a client connecting to Celestia node, wanting to make requests, and the authentication will happen over, like the authorization header, which if you've got a client, you won't need to know about. But that's how you get some admin keys. So let's go back to where we were. Okay, that's pretty cool. So that worked. Do you use JQ a lot, Josh?
I mean, I like it. I don't actually use it enough, though.
Me neither.
But
So here's an example. Like we're making RPC requests. That's what this is about. We've made one. So we're using the DAS module, which is data availability sampling.
Mhm.
So if you join any sort of like Celestia node GitHub issues or any of the core devs calls, people will call about DAS, DASing, DASer, DASing. It's kind of a internal odd word that isn't a real word that we've all sort of like internalized. But yeah, DASing is data availability sampling. So what we said earlier, like what Josh pointed out, is that we're sampling headers, but we're also catching up with initial block down. So you can sort of see the network head height, head of catch up. So we're running these catch up jobs that's trying to get the old data, sample it and actually store it to get us up to speed here. So each time we run this, we should see these numbers change. So what are we on? Head of sample chain, head of catch up 575501. If we go back, where is it now? Yeah, so it's going pretty fast, like you said. It wasn't going that fast earlier. Maybe that's because I was on Mocha. Mocha is definitely not as fast as this, but why is that, Josh? Is that because there are lots of developers are on Mocha, like actually running things?
I think that's the real reason.
Yeah.
I think there's just more data and more transactions that need to be synced and sampled. And I guess it's also maybe important to point out that although it's going back and sampling, it's also still receiving the new network headers. So occasionally there will be a log here, but I mean every like 15 seconds or so.
Let's see if we can get one.
And it'll say that receive the new network.
Yeah, so it's finished headers. Oh, new head. There you go. Right.
Yeah, new network head. It's hidden in all the other ones, but
yeah,
it's not like it's forgetting about the new blocks. Basically, it's still sampling.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to point out. Yeah, it's not just waiting and going up to speed and then we'll be there. It's like in parallel, like getting new stuff and sampling in the background. So that's what all these concurrent concurrent workers are. So if you're like running locally and maybe one part of your application requires the chain to be synced, you can, in your code, you could hit the DAS module sampling stats, look for this catch up done false, and be like, okay, if we need to do something, wait for that to be true. And that because it could be the case there's something you're waiting for, maybe some state or something to come over the network, and you don't want some of your operation. Maybe it's just even as like a toy application you're building that's waiting for data to be up to date. You don't want your code to run, so you could write a poller that says, okay, we spun up a node. Is our node ready? Match against that. There's one sort of little piece of developer something you could do. Is like there's an endpoint, there's a module, and you can see if catch up is done. End of story.
I think like you can also sync from a trusted hash, right?
You can.
Yeah. It's currently in an issue, but yeah, I know it works because I've used it with Viet to sync some things quicker. But that's also a good way if you're like running on Mocha and you don't want to really wait for it to sync everything. You can just use a trusted hash and sync from that point.
Yeah, it's documented in an issue because there is a bug, right? There's like some case where I think it syncs on a new node, maybe. Like if you have no existing state, it works. Yeah. But if there's any existing state, it just says, I've already got some, not doing it. It's something like that, right?
Does that sound right? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let's go back. Let's look at a few others. State is a good module. There's a lot of good stuff in state. So like here's a good one. Let me make this wider a bit. It's a bit long. Maybe we say account address is a good one, right? Oh, so here we go. Perfect. This is what we wanted. It's what we alluded to earlier, right? Yeah. So do you want to give it an explanation, Josh?
Oh, you got it. Yeah.
I got it. All right. So there you go. So node is running without state access. Run it with core IP. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Like everyone runs into this, and is that you spin up the node, you're ready to like make a request, do something, but essentially the light node or the node beyond its like the actual data that is in the DA network is arguably stateless of a kind in terms of state from the consensus network. So you need to configure it to speak to a consensus node to be able to like access state. So in this instance, it's trying to look up a account address for my private key and figure out that. But yeah, as we get further along in this, we're taking a while. But yeah, when you submit a blob, that blob will need to be written as state back to a consensus node too. So let me try and find a Arabica consensus node. So if you go back to the do you have one handy? Consensus node, maybe RPC. Do you have one handy for me?
Yeah, I'm gonna find one real quick.
So what we'll do here, just keep going. So if you remember, we started the light node with P2P network. What you need is core IP. And IP is a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't have to be an IP.
X my flags up. I'm just gonna test it real quick and then send it.
Okay, cool.
Let's
see if this works. Ooh.
Yeah, so we can use validator-1. Send it in the chat.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So I'll be back here. So start it with the core IP. You'll see we started up correctly there. And now I should be able to rerun this command of the state module account address, and we didn't keep a log of it, did we? But you'll have to trust that this was actually the address that we had here.
The log is up there somewhere, but I don't think.
Yeah, it's going to be. I might not have that much history, but yeah. Yeah, so that's our address, and I think I'll say balance for address, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think that'll give you.
Actually, so we have 0 tier.
I think if you run that without the address, it'll also just fetch the address that from the node that's running.
Let's see. I know, what's the address? I thought it wanted the arg, but
Oh,
yeah.
it did need it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's another one for the balance of your node.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
That's all good.
I think just balance, right? Maybe that was it. This is yeah, for checking other addresses too. So maybe balance just works. There you go. You've got a few options. Yeah, there you go. So you know what? I'm not showing my whole screen, but so this is a good point. If you wanted to all right. So if you wanted to actually get some testnet tier here, you do it through the Celestia Discord. So there's the room there, Arabica faucet. You can go in and you make a request in the chat, which is like request address like this. And then you will eventually get some. I'm going to go send myself some now, and then we can.
Yeah. There's also, I think it's good to point out, I guess for Arabica at least, there's also a web faucet.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just drop that in the chat too.
Excellent.
Might be quicker than Discord.
Yeah.
And I've also got an address that I'll send you to check the balance of mine with your node.
Okay, cool. All right, sounds good. Oh, there you go. I got mine. So you can see there we got it. So awesome. Going back to the RPC guide, should we just try and submit a blob?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? So I'm just going to copy and paste the exact command you had there. To the GM. Arabica 11. Namespaces. Do you have a good way to describe namespaces when you're submitting a blob?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, put me on the spot. I feel like it's just a way to think about how the data is stored. Like there's this massive library and you can pick whatever shelf you want to put on wherever you want to put your data, or like in a folder basically.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, anyone else can also put their data there.
I think that's the important part to point out, right? Is that they're not private. They're not for you only. Like it's like a public filing system. Maybe is what you might say, right? So.
And it's big enough where there are enough combinations in theory that like you really don't have to share necessarily with someone else a namespace if you choose it, I guess, well enough. But always a chance that someone will be able to post data there. So I guess if it comes to like your application logic, it's important to know that there might be other blobs that are posted to that namespace, so you have to only watch for yours.
Agree. And yeah, there's nothing stopping someone from just looking at, and we can switch this maybe, looking at a block explorer, seeing that, watching blocks come in, seeing a new namespace you've created and being a shitty person and being like, I'm gonna write to your namespace. So yeah, you can't assume that everything in the namespace will only be yours. So that's something I think to bear in mind as you build something. Yeah, you need a namespace. You can't rely that it'll only be your data in there. So yeah. So let's try this. So how did you guys come up with this namespace? Was it just like a random one for the documents?
There was a random one, and then I think the length of it was extended. Like the argument size was extended, so I just added junk at the beginning.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, that's not going to turn into anything in plain text.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to point out that if you want to, you can basically convert from hex or from text, like a plain text, to hex to come up with a more clever namespace that will show up on the Explorer. And I guess
you have two options, right? You can do base64 or hex, where if you take some string and hex it, and you have to add the OX beforehand, or if it's just base64, it can be as is.
Yes, I think that's right. I haven't actually recently tried it on the CLI.
Yeah, me no. Yeah, I haven't tried it on the CLI.
But I'm going to also send the specifications for namespaces in case anyone is interested in diving deep on that.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely me revisiting as part of all this and being like, okay, how can I come at this fresh? I think some explainer, some sort of, I don't know what it is, some docs or something about namespaces. I feel like we brush right over it, like, oh yeah, and then here's your namespace, and you're just like, wait, what? Tell me more. So
there's always
arguably, yeah, this should submit. Hey, it worked. So we've used the blob module, we submitted to this random namespace that Josh made up, and we submitted some string text, which is GM. So what we've got back is a result object, which is the height of the block height at which that blob was submitted, and a commitment. And the commitment, oh gosh, how do you describe the commitment? That is a sort of, yeah. I didn't prepare for pulling the data back. I was only thinking about submitting. But how would you describe the commitment? So essentially, you need that to ask for the data back. Yeah. Yeah, hash.
Like a hash or like a thing. Yeah. Basically, like a hash for the data.
Yeah.
Where you can use the block height and the commitment to find your data.
What I'm going to do now, actually, is I'm going to switch sharing and go to like Selenium, and we can look for our data. Maybe. How does that sound?
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, let me try something else. Okay. So I'm not that familiar with Selenium, but like, okay, if you remember, we're on Arabica. So you have this network chooser here. So we're in Arabica. We should be able to look up our, what did we say there?
Easiest to look up. Yes.
We can look up the namespace, right?
It might be easiest to look the address up.
Yeah, that's true. So what does that say? Decode or preview content GM. I believe that's us. Let me look back at our address. Ended in 7A3E. 7A3E, that's us. Hooray. So you can see the signer here. This is the stuff we've done. So maybe if I submit another one, we'll see it.
And I just submitted one to a namespace that translates to Bazaar. There's a lot of data being posted though. So
oh, really? Okay. I don't know if this does this live update, or do I have to refresh the page? Selenium.
It doesn't. I don't actually know. I think it does, but
oh, there you go. Yeah, it didn't. I refreshed, but yeah, I just submitted another one there. So if we look at this, so you see we've done the pay for blob. Pay for blob. Oh gosh, there's a lot here. It's interesting, yeah, that they convert the namespace back to the base64, even though it's submitted as the hex. Can we go back and see that blob?
looking on the Arabica Explorer or the Mocha Explorer for an Arabica blob.
Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go. Yes, so I mean that's the gist of it. And then yes, so we have this sort of RPC docs, and you can see it mirrors here like the different modules we were talking about. So we did blob submit, but you can also get here. So with what you had from the height, the namespace, and the commitment, which is that response we got, we can use that to request the data back. So that's why that response you get from the submit is important for you to retrieve your data later. Are there any questions or anything bizarre?
There was a question, to find it, from Goblin John, I guess. Are you able to run like a node on an iPhone? And the answer is yes, with I guess the caveat that it's more of like a demo integration, and it's a few versions. Like it's at this point quite a few versions behind. I'm using my camera. My phone is my camera, but yeah, I can get it running on mine. I think you'll need like an Apple developer account to be able to unlock your phone. Actually, Ramin, you might know more, but to be able to run like your own custom software from Xcode on the phone. So the setup is pretty janky, to be honest. But if you're familiar with Xcode and willing to get your hands dirty a little bit, it doesn't take too much except for having that account.
Yeah, I guess the point being, it is not released in the App Store that you just download. So it's as though you can download the source, set it up in Xcode, and then sort of sideload it onto your phone as though you're a developer developing an app. Therefore, it hasn't gone through App Store review or anything. That's on the iPhone. There is I don't know if it's an Android version or like folks running Linux on their Android devices on another OS that has a light node too, but I'm not Android. I'm anti-Android.
Admittedly, like that's also kind of jank to get set up.
Okay.
So like you can do it. You'll have to keep like the terminal running probably. I have a guide on that I made about a year ago, so it's a little outdated. And I haven't gone through it recently since I had it running iPhone. But you'll basically use like an emulator for running Linux.
Terminal emulator. I see.
It'll basically be like a container for that, and yeah, it'll run. But there's also a package called Vimana. I think it might be a little bit outdated maintenance-wise, but that's basically like a quick install, like the way that you would install an npm package. It allows you to run a light node that way. But the real good answer is like there's no way for people to just download this onto their phone like from an app store yet. Soon at some point.
Yeah, and we have some like growing diversity of data availability nodes. So there is a fork that's being maintained of the Celestia node version that Celestia Labs maintains, which is what we've been using, which modifies quite a bit, but packages up the light node as like a WASM build, which can then run in Chrome, which is like very early but works, does dashing. As I was saying, like internalize that term. If you're going to be in this world, it will be dashing in the browser as a like full light node. So there's that. There's a Rust implementation that's like really good too. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, in terms of like the network and ecosystem, the goal is to have, what do we say, like millions of these light nodes. Like light nodes should be running everywhere, dashing all the time. That is sort of the security guarantee is enabled by everyone running nodes everywhere all the time. So like that is an absolute goal of more nodes, easier to run, lighter. And then similarly in terms of node readiness, we're working on as we were saying earlier, doing that initial block download and sync. You kind of do have to wait for that to get far along before you can sort of have an effective running node. But we'll be working on something in the next 3-4 months to basically sync backwards. So instead of saying, okay, I need to go from the start and move forward, and then you're up to date. Is like immediately you're ready to go, and it will backfill the data in a way that makes it such that it's backfilling and working in reverse, which seems like really straightforward. But yeah, I guess when you're building these things from scratch, all you think about is like the beginning and going forward, and then you realize, damn, like in 4 months we're gonna have like I don't know, Merkle's like 1.6 million blocks or something, I think, right? It's up there. Like it takes a good hour to sync, and then if your computer goes to sleep, you're not paying attention. You're like, oh man, I'm still waiting here. But yeah, so we're really short for time. But while I've got the browser shared, I'm going to go ahead because I have Celestia RPC. I think it's called the Celestia RPC base. Oh, here we go.
Nice.
So this little project here will get you up and running with making RPC requests in Go like instantly. So there's a little bit of jankiness with if you're a Go developer with your Go mod, where you have to do some of these replaces here. And I didn't promise this because I just got it up to latest version of 13.3 today. But there's a few packages we swap out for our forks, like Cosmos SDK and stuff like this. And if you were to just go and import RPC client directly from Node like this, it's not going to work. Like your Go mod is going to have issues. You're going to have a bad time. But if you do these replacements in your Go mod, it'll be ready to go. And a quick way to think about this, of like if in the future you're trying to do it, is you really just have to copy the replacements in Celestia Node. So these all get added when you do Go mod tidy. But if you scroll to the very bottom, you can copy this, put it in yours, and you'll be able to do Go mod tidy, Go run your main, and you'll be good to go. Like you'll have like code like this. So here you could do, import the client, new client, and then, we'll talk about this shortly, but then you'll be ready to go. I'm gonna blast through this real quick, just to make sure we cover it. There's a couple of things that are really important of note here. You can connect over HTTP here, but there are a few JSON RPC endpoints that offer you back a subscription or a channel. There's specifically one called subscribe. If we go to RPC docs, I had them a minute ago here. If you go to header, I thought we were going to run out of time. So if you see this one here, subscribe. So this, for better or worse, this JSON RPC thing tries to represent like Golang idioms in the RPC. So this is why you see this thing here. It's showing you this channel. It's because it's trying to show to you like, hey, you're speaking over the network, but pretend it's Go. So what this does here, this subscribe one, and this is what I was going to demo, is it gives you a subscription channel as new headers come in. But the thing that gets people is if you connect over HTTP here instead of WebSocket, it will give you a very oblique error, and you'll be like, what is going on? And so that's what you need to know there, WebSocket. And then the other thing here is where you need your JWT. So if you remember, we did Celestia Lite, auth, then a permission level, read, write, admin. If we go back to Node here, you can see what permissions you need here. So, subscribe just needs permissions read, sync state read. But then, maybe we look at some others here. There you go. Begin, redelegate. That's an oblique one, but like that needs writes. Probably some state ones. I don't think any of these do need admin in the RPC. But so this gives you an opportunity to say, maybe my application is only using 3 or 4 of these endpoints. They're all read only. Therefore, I can generate read level JWT and not worry about accidentally leaking out an admin JWT into my environment somewhere. But yeah, maybe I'm not going to like pull it all down and write code because we ran out of time. But maybe if I just pretend. So here you would effectively be able to do RPC head sub. It looks something like this. Maybe I'll push something up and share it later. But headers, it'll look like this. If any Go programmers out there, this will all look good. Return, you should catch the error. Then you could do for header range headers, and you could do front header. This will work. I'm not gonna be able to run it, but like, yeah, that will be a way for you to say, okay, my RPC client, each of these new clients has your editor will like complete it for you, but each of those will have something that maps to one of these modules here. So header, subscribe, and the code in this Go thing will look the same. RPC header subscribe, you can see it gives you an error if it wasn't able to connect because you're on HTTP, not WebSocket headers. Then yeah, you can sort of dig through this and see. So subscribe gives you a response, which is well, this one just gives you a channel, but yeah, once you're in there. But maybe I'll post my repo in there, and yeah, someone can try and pull it down and mess around. Like that's a quick way to get started on this. Let me just cancel changes. But yeah, this repo is a real quick way to just get up to date. So if you're feeling super inspired after speaking to me and Josh, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna write some code, and then you want to keep the momentum going, pull this down and just, yeah, you should be, just remember, paste your JWT into that field there, and then you should be able to write some code. Maybe a good one is to do one like we start with like state, what was it, like state balance or something like that, and just see what you get back, and it'll work. And then yeah, the fun one is to do the subscribe. I like that one because you can subscribe, set up the loop, it'll run forever, and you can just print out the height, and it will look like our heads coming in that we saw running the light node. It'll be your code, and then it's working. You can build whatever you want. So yeah, that's it. I thought we would. Yeah, does this always happen? You get going and then you run out of time? I thought it'd be like 20 minutes in, like nothing left to do. So
It's all good. We can keep going if you have time, but also want to respect people's time. So
yeah, no, totally. That's good. I think that's good there. And then yeah, I don't know, I'm available. Like I think people tweeted at me, but like yeah, Twitter or Discord if anyone wants to ask me anything about any of this, or yeah, but otherwise, yeah, that repo should get you up and running like instantly. As long as you have Go, you can pull it down, write a few lines. As long as you followed Josh's beautiful tutorial there with the docs, you should be good to go.
and I guess I wanted to show we have there's a light node running on my iPhone.
Nice.
We're getting got by the focus, but yeah, so it's getting new headers, it's getting new blocks. It also has about 100 peers. So I don't know, that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Are there any last questions from the chat? Also, hey Mancho, Didier, Nicholas, Sammy, Garang, thank you for coming today. And thank you everyone else for joining.
Yeah,
On that,
thanks.
I think we're gonna call it. So yeah, you mentioned that Twitter is a good way to reach you, Discord.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Discord I don't check too much unless I'm trying to get testnet. So I don't know what's preferred support. But like yeah, on the repo, Celestia Node, find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm RMN on Twitter. But yeah, if anyone, always happy to chat and see what folks are building. So
if you ever run into a problem, just submit a ticket for it. If you run into a problem with the docs, submit a ticket for it. We definitely like to know when things are going not as they should. So
if something's going bad, call him.
Yeah.
If something's going good, say it's because of me showing you how to do it. So.
Well, thank you, Ramin, for
teaching. No, thank you.
And thanks everyone again for joining. We'll see you again for a few Rollkit workshops today. So have a good one, and see you in the Infinite Space Bazaar.